I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading in Mark chapter 12, and we're going to focus on verses 41 through 44. Sitting across from the temple treasury, Jesus watched how the crowd dropped money into the treasury. And many rich people were putting in large sums, and a poor widow came in, and she dropped in 2 tiny coins that were worth very little. And summoning his disciples, Jesus said to them, I assure you that this poor widow has put in more than those who are giving into the temple treasury, for they gave out of their surplus, and she, out of her poverty, has put in everything that she possessed, all that she had to live on. You know, throughout Mark chapter 12, and then of course into the beginning of chapter 13, it's a series of teachings that form a continuous thought concerning money and the heart. And perhaps the most endearing teaching is the account right here of Jesus' recognition and honoring of a poor widow as she's presenting her offering in the temple. It's worth noticing that Jesus is watching the crowd as they give their money. And he's not just kind of casually looking over there. He wasn't just in the proximity of the offering box. He was watching intently. So much so that Jesus even noticed the smallest of offerings. And the Messiah's notice of a widow's offering adds to the urgency of his warning against the scribes back in Mark chapter 12, verse 40, where he says, they devour widows' houses and they say long prayers just for a show. You know, Jesus' observation of the widow is closely tied to his quoting of the Shema, which in Hebrew means to listen or to hear. And we find it in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Okay? Earlier in Mark chapter 12, he's quoting it in verses 29 through 30. Here it is in English, by the way. Listen, Israel, or hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then he goes on to say, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. This widow was living out the Shema. I mean, everything that she had was devoted to the Lord. While the scribes, well, they were only rendering lip service to the Lord. For his glory, this widow believed God with all that she had and with all that she was. And the scribes were actually exploiting all that she had, which was very little, in order to bring glory to themselves. But when we give money to support ministry, it's not just that we're only paying them for a good show. Oh, you give me a good show, well, then I'll pay you. No, really our devotion is not even toward your church or to a ministry. It's toward the Lord. And sadly, these religious leaders, that is, those whose job it was to exemplify the Shema, I mean, they should have been the greatest example of loving the Lord with everything that they were and all that they had. Well, they had chosen to ignore Jesus' exhortation back in Mark chapter 12, verse 17, where he said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. But what did they do? Well, they coveted. And in coveting the things of Caesar, and the things of the world, well, they were robbing God of his most cherished offering that they could have given him, which is themselves. Given what the shepherds of Israel had become, is it any wonder that the Messiah would predict the temple's destruction? And we'll see that at the beginning of Mark chapter 13. So let us always remember that Jesus intently watches our offerings, whether they be offerings of money or offerings of time or of talent. And as God is one, well, then let us each worship him singularly with single-mindedness and all of ourself, whole self-worship. And that is what it means to wholly and completely follow him. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at www.groundworksministries.com.